Hello and welcome to Premier Injuries. Today we are talking about your FPL assets, giving you the advice and information in terms of the Premier League's data to help you with your choices. And just before we get into this week's defensive assets, because we've got attacking assets coming up tomorrow, do stay subscribed so you can see tomorrow's video, but also some of the great content that we have on here. We've got Dr. Raj, we've got our Monday data show, and through the summer we're going to have some fantastic interviews as well. Ben's nodding away there because I think he knows as well some of the excellent guests that we've got lined up, booked in. We've used our little black book of connections, and you know, I can promise a really good fun summer for all of us to help you with your Premier League teams. But yes, I think starting off, one of the first points that I wanted to put to you, Ben, is as these weeks draw on, I'm becoming less and less attracted to any defensive assets. I mean, every team over the last 6 game weeks has had less than a 50% clean sheet rate. Most teams are underperforming their XG conceded, apart from 8 teams, and the best side for keeping goals out has actually been Leeds with 4.47 goals prevented. This is the amazing thing. Nothing is as what it should seem. I mean, Leeds, normally the narrative through the season has been a poor defence, and then all of a sudden they're one of the best kind of ones for keeping clean sheets at the moment. So starting there, actually, I think, what do you think about this crazy end to this season?
I mean, it's difficult enough trying to predict games, predict outcomes, goals, clean sheets during an ordinary campaign. You know, we're off the back of this anomaly, this outlier, this season that's never, this unprecedented times. These last maybe 4 or 5 game weeks are going to be difficult. Players are fatigued, teams are fatigued. Then you factor in, external influencing factors, fight for survival, players pushing for European qualification spots, domestic cup duties, those still involved in the latter stages of other European competition. So sides heavily rotated, and then you've just got the teams who are just going to basically, tread water, and who are maybe already looking to prepare for 2021, 2022 by maybe blooding a couple of youngsters or bringing in, 1 or 2 other players who've been on the peripherals and the fringes of those first team squads. So, it's very difficult. And it's no surprise to see that the number of goals being scored and conceded is increased dramatically, as our data showed when we produced that big piece just after the last international break.
And this is the interesting thing. Teams like Chelsea, you'd kind of expect, they've kept 3 clean sheets out of their last 6. Brighton, not one that you'd expect, are in there. And as I said, Leeds are the best in terms of goals prevented. They've not necessarily kept a lot of clean sheets, but they're still doing quite good bits. Meslier's getting a lot of save points and it's snap. But I think we do have to actually start with Leeds, because a tough set of fixtures that would try any team within the Premier League, and Leeds have come out of it relatively unscathed. They've looked pretty fantastic, and I think this weekend's blockout of Manchester United was really symptomatic of a Leeds team that are very comfortable in the Premier League. Into this end of the season now, they have a fantastic run, and their defenders, I would say, meet our criteria that you and I kind of drew up, Ben, of being able to score goals and maybe in with a chance of clean sheets as well. I'm thinking if Leeds can keep out Man United, can beat Manchester City, and can hold Liverpool to a draw as well, even though that they conceded a goal. I mean, these teams should be very worried when the Leeds kind of either come there or they have to go to Leeds. But my question to you is, Ben, is do you want to load up on more than one Leeds defender? Because Dallas is kind of the go-to, and I think he's a great asset. You look at others, and Alioski or somebody like that can and does get involved with the goals. There is that possibility there, Ayling, somebody like that. But the problem is with this turn of fixtures, so they've got Brighton, Tottenham, Burnley, Southampton and West Brom towards the end of the season. You want a Bamford in there, you want a Rafinha or a Jack Harrison. Is it right to kind of double up on their defensive assets?
I think it's a risky strategy. It's bold. It's a big call. You see, you're looking on paper and you may be looking at the data and you're thinking, you can pluck out one or two of those teams and think very good chance. But, lots of people would be looking at that Wolves game at Molineux last weekend and thinking, right, well, Burnley come and travel away from Turf Moor. Good chance of a clean sheet there for Nuno's men. And look what happened. We had a Chris Wood hat-trick by half time, I hasten to add, and Burnley go on to score 4. So it just shows that, that there are some strange results at this time of the season. You would assume, or you would think that maybe West Brom on the last game, they're going to be dead and buried by then. So that's a little bit of a dead rubber game. But then again, you might see, Bielsa chopping and changing his squad again, bringing maybe in some development players. So I would always err on the side of caution when it comes to maybe doubling up, because not all is what it seems when it ends. And for me, the fixture difficulty rating, yes, use it as a guide, use it as a starting point, but do your due dil and consider, the wider circle and, and external factors that could potentially, influence, the possibilities of limiting maybe goals scored or the possibility of clean sheets.
At the moment, I'm happy to play just 3 at the back, and it's kind of transformed from what it was a little bit earlier to now Trent Alexander-Arnold, Luke Shaw and Dallas at the moment. And I think that's fine because they're all defenders that I would say have some of the highest chance of getting clean sheets, but also there is that ability to score goals there or be assisting goals, I think, with Luke Shaw's kind of assistance there. But yeah, I've mentioned Trent Alexander-Arnold there. Another question to you is Liverpool. I mean, they're another team that have a really good run towards the end of the season. I think they're actually doing quite well in some instances. I think that they were humbled a little bit by Newcastle once again, but they've only conceded 3 goals in their last 6 game weeks. They have had 2 clean sheets in that time, and the underlying kind of XG conceded data is really good as well. They're in the upper echelons of the Premier League, like you'd usually expect them to be. Trent Alexander-Arnold is somebody that we touted a few weeks ago, but again, an interesting question. Liverpool are going to be one of the top teams coming towards the end of the season. They have a lot to play for. They have to basically secure Champions League because that will help them their next season, get targets and whatever. But they want to be playing next season with Champions League instead of, the Europa League or even lower than that. I mean, their position is not secure at all. So looking at it, should Robertson also come into our thinking? Because Salah is, I think, a real mainstay. I think he's a good own towards the end of the season. He is their best kind of attacking outlet. Jota is on the horizon, but are his minutes kind of secure? Whereas Robertson, TAA are kind of the mainstays of that team. Or is that, again, another risky one? Just to add to that, I always see as Robertson and TAA almost as 7 midfielders rather than 7 million defenders, though.
Yeah, look, Liverpool, one of those teams that we highlighted. Salah and Trent in particular, the 2 players that we thought that could benefit and reap the rewards during this run-in. Trent's been great. I actually brought him in myself when he went down to 12% ownership, which is unheard of almost for Trent over the last couple of seasons. Now, the last 2 results for Liverpool have been particularly hard to take, given how those results have came about, and with conceding late goals. I think it was 87th minute at Ellen Road when Llorente scored, and then Callum Wilson disallowed goal in time added on last weekend. But then they go up and Newcastle score again through Joe Willock to make a great point. And if I'm right, I'm thinking Liverpool, if games had ended in the 85th minute, they would have been 15 points better off than they are now. So that, that last 5 minutes plus added time has been a real problem for them this season. And it just goes to show you those fine margins. And, that could be just the accumulation of how hard they've worked over the last couple of seasons, but also not necessarily, it's bad enough the players that they're missing through injury, but it put extra stress and strain on the current squad and the players who are out there already. As an attacking force, yes, I like Liverpool. Would I double up? If I had the budget, yes. And I'm purely thinking of defenders during this period now for offensive returns and anything else that comes in terms of a defensive clean sheet. Well, that's a bit of a bonus for me because, Liverpool have got to be going out there. They've got to be a little bit gung-ho. They need to be scoring their goals. They need to take their chances first and foremost. I think they're converting less than 9% of chances within the box this season, whereas when they won the league, I think that was in and around 16 or 17%. So it shows that, yes, there's been problems in defence, but predominantly, and Salah's still exceeding, I think, his XG, but the problems have come elsewhere with the likes of Firmino and Mane and what have you, who just haven't sort of delivered. So, yes, look, Jurgen Klopp's men have got to go out there. I don't think, let's forget of finishing outside of any European qualification spot, but even Europa League is probably unfathomable, unthinkable, and something which, they'll not want and they'll not be happy with on Merseyside. So it's they've got to go out and win all of these games, and that potentially leaves them open a little bit at the back. And it depends if you feel like there are better attacking assets, in and around that £7 to £8 million price point. I would certainly have one of those in, and it's typically a bit of a coin toss on who that would be. Although Trent in recent weeks has been showing that little bit of form, and he's probably going out there feeling he's got a point to prove to Gareth Southgate, ahead of the Euros.
And looking at the underlying data as well, Alexander-Arnold has been involved in more expected assists. He's got 0.85 to Robertson's reverse 0.58. Quite interesting there. He's created more chances and more big chances as well. 3 big chances, which is the most of any defender over the last 4 game weeks, and second behind Luke Shaw for total chances created. So they're both looking pretty fantastic. And as I said there, Luke Shaw, I think, is a great own as well towards the end of the season. An interesting one, not one that I feel totally comfortable with. I've always said I'm not happy with owning Everton defensive assets, but looking at the data, looking at this, I have to kind of come from an objective opinion here. Digne is a big favourite. However, I've also looked at Seamus Coleman. Interesting, cheaper option. Maybe one for you because he's a bit of a differential, but he's much cheaper than Digne. First of all, that allows you to put your money elsewhere in the team. But he's producing, personally, good numbers himself. He has more chances created than Digne over the last few game weeks, but Digne has a better XA and XA from open plays, so maybe the ones that Digne is creating are of higher quality. But sometimes it is quantity over quality in these games where towards the end of the season, lethargy and things like that. So that could play well into Seamus Coleman's hands if he is just doing more. But also Everton have been one of the better defences over the last 6 with an XG conceded of just 4.92 and the second lowest big chances conceded. So some interesting data there. And looking at the kind of projected points towards the end of the season, Digne is just behind the likes of Trent Alexander-Arnold and Robertson. Coleman should probably be in there as well. So what do you think of maybe Seamus Coleman as an alternative to the big man Digne that a lot of people are moving towards?
Well, I'm on Digne and have been since a wild card. And yes, I do like Coleman, but we've talked about this many times before. And during this period, you want guaranteed starters, you want players that are guaranteed minutes. And what we've seen on occasions is Coleman sort of float in and out of that starting 11, depending on how Carlo Ancelotti wants to set up his team. Now, the concerns for me, we've seen Ancelotti go with a 3 at the back with 3 centre halves and maybe start Iwobi on the right-hand side, maybe in a 3-4-1-2 or a 3-4-2-1. So, he's a risk on that front. And then also even we've seen Mason Holgate go out there on the right-hand side as well. which again puts Seamus Coleman at risk. So that would be the only worry in that regard. But yes, I do like him. If you don't quite have the budget to stretch, to a Digne, and you've got backup from the bench, then yeah, I don't. It's hard to overlook somebody like Seamus Coleman.
Talking about Seamus Coleman, then, do you think his minutes will be managed towards the end of the season due to his injury history? I mean, looking at it over the last few game weeks, 75 minutes, 90, 29 in that Tottenham game, and then 90. So was he brought off in that Tottenham game because he had an injury, or is that just minute management by Ancelotti?
Yeah, that's always the case. We've seen in past seasons and ongoing, there have been one or two slight muscular problems with Seamus Coleman. He's obviously getting to the twilight years of his career, and we know just the type of player that he is. He's a 100%er. He's energetic. He's explosive. He's up and down that line. He's backwards and forwards, and that always opens you up to being a little bit more susceptible to those soft tissue and muscular problems. So it is just careful management by Carlo Ancelotti as opposed to something specific. And that's the concern just in and around, the fixtures of whether Ancelotti may just see something on the training pitches that, we're not privy to. Might just see that he's looking a little bit tired in terms of his GPS data or some of those stress hormones. And can just easily take him out the firing line. And with backup and players in similar positions who can perform similar roles, then, there's no need to take any unnecessary risks with Seamus Coleman.
One player that we said don't take a risk on was Ricardo Pereira, because we said Timothy Castagne, and he's done really well at the moment. I think it's a pick that we're quite proud of. But looking at Leicester, again, this weekend, Crystal Palace didn't want to read the script. They didn't want to follow the rules, and they scored. Wilfried Zaha was in there. Looking at the Foxes as well, over the next few fixtures, they've got two what people would class as easier ones, and in a difficult run towards the end of the season. Would your advice be to stick with Castagne towards the end of the season? So we've got Southampton, then Newcastle. After that is Man United, Chelsea and Tottenham. Is he a season keeper for that very limited time? Or do you think that maybe after those couple of game weeks against Southampton and Newcastle to maybe consider a nice option that has a 3-game jaunt to the end of the season would maybe a lot to play for, or just in a better kind of situation?
I mean, that's a big question. And just because teams have got something to play for, that doesn't necessarily mean that players are necessarily going to be able to step up and deliver. And I would suggest if Castagna continues the form that he's been shown in recent matches and he delivers in week 34 and week 35, do you want to be taken out of your start 11? We're always a big advocate of you follow the form. Despite maybe what some of the data may tell you or not tell you, if players are delivering, then I think you should stick with them. And, Leicester, they've got a 4-point cushion in third place at the moment. But then players are also playing for places in that domestic cup final, the FA Cup. So there's still a lot on the table there for Leicester City. It's good that Castagna can play on both flanks. So we've seen him switch across to the right against Crystal Palace last time out with, I think it was Luke Thomas coming in on the left. So, he's not just stuck to one side of the pitch. He's a player that Brendan Rodgers will happily utilise on either flank, and that just gives him more options. So look, I'd be sticking with Castagna at this moment in time, and we'll see what the next 2 game weeks bring.
Now, a little bit earlier in the week when we were doing our data show, you said that you reserved your swear words, even though you're a little bit annoyed at your technology over, maybe defensive and attacking assets. Well, we've got to talk about Wolves here. I don't know if you want to potentially describe them with any of the swear words that you saved in reserve.
I brought in Semedo as one of my free transfers last weekend against Burnley. So, you think there's a good chance there of a clean sheet. You look at Wolves and you think that they're on a decent run of late, upturn of form. They had been pretty tight at the back. Haven't been, nothing like the Wolves that we've been used to historically since they came up, a lot more passive in their approach, a lot more conservative in their play, and it all came crashing down, didn't it, with a bang on Sunday. And look, I'm going to put it out there: if it was another manager without, with if Nuno wasn't at the helm, I think there'd be questions asked this season just on how, in terms of how Wolves have performed, and the players that they've brought in. I think the Raul Jimenez injury maybe papers over a few cracks, but yeah, there's been a lot of decisions being made there, wrong decisions, which I think people have the right to maybe question and call out upon. And if that was to continue into next season, over the first maybe 6, 10, 12 games, then I think Nuno should be worried.
Yeah, it's not good times for Wolves at the moment. The kind of 4-goal drubbing there. I don't think many people can, clearly admit that they saw that coming. And in terms of their last 6 game weeks of data, we talked about it last week. I kind of said I was a little bit more reserved about Wolves, just looking at them through this season and knowing the personnel that they have. Patricio is not a very good goalkeeper. I kind of group him with the likes of Pickford, but in the last few game weeks or so, their data's not been that bad defensively. Looking at it, they were a side that had an XG conceded of 5.48 over the last 6 games. So that's almost a goal conceded every game in terms of XG conceded. And then looking at it, they had 2 clean sheets. They were doing all right. But coming into this game, you'd think there was a high chance. But I think this goes back to the articles that we looked into. Wolves are a side at the moment with nothing really to play for. And so we're going to see them have anomalous results. We're going to see them maybe concede a lot or score a few in a game when you thought they weren't going to. There's nothing there really driving them. And I love the phrase that you use, they're playing in flip-flops. They're already at the seaside thinking about their, daiquiris, tequilas, whatever they're going to be having in the summer, rather than thinking, oh, I've got to be playing against whoever they are. And I think this actually makes it kind of more appealing for maybe the likes of Pereira this weekend, who is somebody that I still kind of tout to have a good run towards the end of the season. But we will get to that in terms of attacking assets in tomorrow's video. The final talking point that I wanted to put to you, though, Ben, is Chelsea now have a tough run of fixtures. They have the rotation risk already of Tuchel, and they have the added worry of, the Champions League. Are they going to get to the final? Can we even trust in Mendy? Because right now he's my starting goalkeeper. Brought me into my side because I thought he's the only way into that Chelsea defence. And it's annoying to do it's annoying to do a goalkeeper transfer, but I may have to do that because if he's not starting, as much as I like Fulham, I have a soft spot for them, they're not doing that top 4 kind of defensive data when I brought Areola in a few game weeks ago and got a few, little clean sheets off of him. I can't have a fairly expensive goalkeeper at that not starting. Maybe should I be looking at the likes of Dean Henderson at Manchester United, or is he equally under threat?
I think in terms of Premier League, then it certainly looks as if Henderson has got the nod over De Gea. De Gea looks to be the goalkeeper that will be deployed in the Europa League. With regards to Mendy, I mean, to me, there's no room for sentiment in football. Maybe a risk, maybe misread Tuchel to an extent. I mean, no team's rotated more across the last 6 game weeks than Chelsea. It's ridiculous. I think they've averaged in and around maybe at least 6 changes, which from a logistical standpoint is just a complete nightmare in terms of FPL. The difference between maybe him and Pep is, Pep you can hang your hat on Edison, but we've seen Kepa return. And that was a strange one. That was, reflective of his performances on the training pitches and his influence in the change room, even though he hasn't been involved. Mendy's going for the Golden Gloves here. let's not forget the reason why he was brought in, and the reasons as to why Kepa was, pushed aside. There were too many mistakes in this game, and this Chelsea revival or run is being built on that sort of solid foundation, that back line. That said, we've seen a great 1-1 draw, the share of the spoils against Madrid midweek. Chelsea will be focused on that. It's a fine balancing act. They're sitting fourth at the moment in the Premier League. There are a few points off Leicester, and I think they're maybe two or three above West Ham, who are breathing down their necks as well, and Liverpool more than capable of putting a run together. The problem is Tuchel trusts Kepa, and when he trusts two goalkeepers and he's happy to deploy both goalkeepers and rotate both, maybe a little bit like Hasselhouten at Southampton, with Forster and McCarthy, you're never 100% sure. But unlike those goalkeepers down at Southampton, you're paying a premium price for those goalkeepers at Stamford Bridge. And for me, it's one of those ones, if you have a spare transfer or you have a wild card, then yeah, I'd be looking to move off Mendy, because you want those guarantees. You want your premium players to be starting and getting those minutes.
And the thing is, as well, as the reason why I consider Dean Henderson is that because since he's been between the sticks of Man United, they've done a fantastic job at preventing goals. This is what he did at Sheffield United last year. This is obviously why Sheffield United really struggled this year. He is a fantastic goalkeeper, and I really enjoy seeing a young English goalkeeper doing really well at a top side. So I might make that move, but there's other kind of fires to put out in my team as well. So there's a lot to consider, especially with you breathing down my neck as well. So talking about, the top teams there, the top two of us, I'm only just on top at the moment. And you've got two chips to play as well. So very squeaky bum time towards the end of the season for me. But this is the end of this defensive assets episode. I'm going to wrap up here by just saying, please remember to like, share and subscribe. Every like helps us out. Every share gets our voices out there, and subscribing means that you'll be able to watch all of our content for free on this channel, and lots of good content there is. But I'm going to pass it over to Ben just to sign us out.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. Another great podcast. Really enjoyed that one. Interesting to see how this is going to pan out over those remaining game weeks with those defensive assets. One to watch very closely indeed. But yes, attacking assets to drop tomorrow. I think there'll be some deep discussion with regards to where we see in the picks potentially. Looking forward for that. So yeah, keep your eyes and ears peeled. We'll push it all through the social medias and subscribe. So as soon as it drops, be the first to listen. I'll see you all again soon.